با اون همه ادعا رژیم صهیونی در زیر ضربات جمهوری اسلامی تقریباً از پا در آمد و له شد.
I believe it was total obliteration. I believe they didn't have a chance to get anything out because we acted fast. If it would have taken 2 weeks maybe, but it's very hard to remove that kind of material. Very hard and very dangerous for them to remove it.
יש לנו ניצחון גדול במערכה נגד הצורר שבא לכלותנו, והסרנו בניצחון הזה שני איומים קיומיים מיידיים כדי להבטיח את נצח ישראל.
As the Middle East recovers from the chaos of a 12-day war between Iran and Israel and the United States, all sides have emerged claiming victory. But is the real winner not a state, but a single man, Benjamin Netanyahu? The Israeli Prime Minister not only managed to drag the US into his long-held ambition to destroy Iran's nuclear facilities as well as its air defenses, but after nearly 2 years of a live-streamed genocide in Gaza, an ICC arrest warrant, and a domestic political corruption scandal, Netanyahu appears to largely have escaped the consequences of his actions. And now he has the US president lobbying on his behalf. Last night, Donald Trump took to social media, calling for a pardon of Netanyahu for his corruption trial and for his corruption trial to be cancelled. He also said that, quote, it was the United States of America that saved Israel, and now it is going to be the United States of America that saves Bibi Netanyahu. So is the embattled Israeli Prime Minister invincible, or will his hubris be his downfall? Joining us now is the president of the US Middle East Project and a former Israeli peace negotiator. Daniel Levy, welcome to MEELive.
It's very good to be with you, and you teed that up fantastically with that invincible versus hubristic.
Now, Netanyahu just a couple of days ago said in an interview with Israeli media that Israel was not only changing the face of the Middle East, but changing the face of the world. What do you make of Netanyahu's estimation of Israel after this war, as well as his estimation of himself?
I actually think that he speaks a degree of truth when he says it's changing the face of the region and the world. I don't think we have ever seen such criminality alongside such impunity when there is such transparency. To have gotten away with what Israel continues to do, and under cover of the 12-day war with Iran, to have tried to embed this criminal enterprise, this murderous enterprise of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. But let's zoom out a little. 3 decades, Netanyahu, and he's been the premier in Israel for much of that 3 decades, Netanyahu has been telling us the existential threat. Iran, so many times he said, oh, they're on the precipice. There was no more evidence this time than in previous times. The excuse for the Israeli act of aggression and violation of the UN Charter with the attacks on Iranian territory was not a credible one. Nevertheless, he succeeded in bringing in America. And here we are. And for me, it feels underwhelming. America joined this Israeli strike. And yet, you have an Israel that I don't think is strutting around and has the region looking at it and saying, I want to be on their side. I want to align myself with those guys. You have this strange combination that undoubtedly Israel did some damage. But Netanyahu has a dilemma now. Because if Netanyahu says, we've won, it's all done, then the centerpiece of his regional strategy, the pillar around which he organized things, namely the Iranian threat, has been removed. And that was crucial to his attempt to decenter what he was doing against the Palestinians. You could tell an awful lot about a person in recent decades. If when you said, let's talk about the Middle East, West Asia, if they said, yes, what do you think about the problem of Iran? You knew you were having one conversation. If they said, yes, what do you think about the problem of Israel's dispossession of the Palestinians, denial of their rights, apartheid regime, you were having a different conversation. Netanyahu now faces a situation in which the American president has said, the US saved Israel. Remember Netanyahu's claim all those years, we will defend ourselves by ourselves. Not anymore. A region looks at it and it sees an Israeli threshold of pain, which is positioned somewhere very different, sadly, to many other places of the region, which have known such pain. Israeli resilience, Israeli capacity to absorb pain, Israeli societal strength are all legitimately questioned. And most of all, people look at this and they see a state that is apparently at one and the same time both vulnerable and genocidal. That is not a clever place to find yourself, and it's the place that Netanyahu has brought Israel to.
This war with Iran introduced many Israeli citizens to something that they never experienced before, certainly that hasn't happened in several decades, which is the real threat of airstrikes over their homes and their cities. Not just rockets from over the border and from Lebanon or Gaza, but actual damage to a lot of the foundations that around them. How significant was this on the collective psyche of Israelis? Has it undermined the government's narrative about the importance of war to the country's identity, or has it emboldened it?
Look, in situations like this, it cuts both ways. There is, unsurprisingly, a degree of cognitive dissonance. Within Israel, you do now have the resurgence of voices saying, enough, we're exhausted, enough with war. There was a coincidental coming together of the declaration of the ceasefire with Iran with one of the heaviest days of losses of Israeli troops in Gaza. After all this time, Israel has not defeated the resistance in Gaza. So I think there is that sense of fatigue. Israeli society is divided. This is going to play out over a long period of time. But it's not just how Israeli society sees itself. It's also how others see Israeli society and see Israel and see what is the absence of a realistic, acceptable, political horizon. Every problem is looked at as something that can be bombed. Size of the bomb, location of the bomb. There is no political plan, not for the day after Gaza, or for the day after Iran, or Lebanon, or Syria. Israel seems to be on this hegemonic drive, but it cannot play that role. And this is the corner in which Israel is in some ways trapping itself, which doesn't mean that tomorrow it all unravels. But Israel is taking itself to a place where it is going to be ever less acceptable in the region. Those who thought they were buying the smartest regional insurance policy by aligning with Israel are looking at that policy and thinking, can I go to the bank with this? Questions of proliferation, right? What does Iran now conclude, having never made the decision to weaponize its nuclear program? There is one nuclear-armed state in the region, Israel. You look at South Asia, India, Pakistan, it creates deterrence. I'm not encouraging nuclear proliferation, but that is the question that now stands for people. Turkey, Saudi, others are going to be saying, what's my missile capacity? Do I need to think about nuclear? And so I think the question of Israel's nuclear weapon is now on the table. Is this going to be a WMD free zone or a free-for-all? So I think there's an accumulation of things here, not least the fact that through this we saw an unprecedented controversy around Israel on the American political right. Israel first versus America first became a very palpable thing in MAGA Republican world. On the Democrat side, if it wasn't for the corrupt nature of the Democrat Party political leadership, you would see, I think, Zohran Mamdani's all over the place winning and putting the best foot forward for the Democrats. But what I'm saying is that when you look at this from the outside, the challenges to Israel are growing, and the inability of the Israeli political class to have a realistic, non-hubristic, non-militarist, non-genocidal answer to the challenges it faces, it's very palpable that they don't have such a thing.
There's been so much speculation in recent weeks about the nature of Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu's relationship. There's analysts suggesting that there's a fracture between the two men and that could grow wider. You mentioned the ongoing civil war that is emerging inside of Trump's own base that was kind of very engaged and very vocal in the days leading up to the U.S. airstrikes. At the start of the week, you saw that incredibly strong language from Trump to Netanyahu, maybe the strongest language that I've seen from any U.S. president towards Israel, in his anger at Israel supposedly kind of breaking the rules of the ceasefire he'd been put in place. But then just overnight, you saw that very flowery messaging that Trump is putting out, almost begging the Israeli public to take Netanyahu back and forget about his mistakes, his corruption scandal. What is your reading of the relationship between these two very volatile men?
It seems to me that there's something that we're not party to, that we are not being exposed to, that factors into this relationship. There is a Trump element here, which, we've got another 3.5+ years in this term to wrap our heads around. Good luck to us all. But the fact that he went from that impatient, petulant, expletive-ridden statement about Israel and the Israeli leadership to this outreach, get Netanyahu off of his criminal court case, do the right thing by the great leader, etc. What that says to me is there's something that has not been fully explored, dug into, exposed, that is mediating somewhere in this relationship. Now, if you put together what Trump said, if you put together what Witkoff said, if you put together Netanyahu's political need and expose that's now in the Israeli media, I get the impression that Netanyahu has looked at this and said, I've got one option now, which I didn't have before this Iran situation. Netanyahu, if he so chooses, could now say, I've got my legacy thing. I'm in court. Someone is going to have to deal with the mess that I created. Why don't I step down with this win in the context of getting the court case closed? And I think he could do that. I think he is very unlikely to choose that path. And therefore, he has to convince the American president that he's the guy who can carry this forward. And I think what the Israelis have told the Americans is, now that Iran has been defeated, nothing stands in the way of the glorious Middle East that we've told you about for so long, because that has been their narrative. So he has tried to sell them a line that now that Iran's gone, we could stop Gaza. Of course, many Palestinians will have to leave Gaza. Of course, some of Gaza will have to be ours. We might have to annex the West Bank as well. But the Arabs can go in and deal with Gaza. And we'll be willing, if the Arabs are willing to go into Gaza and we can annex things, and the Arabs are willing to make peace with us, then we can say that the Palestinians can have a future political horizon. It's a fabulous deal, Mr. President. Now go sell it to your Arab friends. I don't think it's going to get anywhere, but, and this is the crucial thing that we also have to bear in mind, for all the cracks and fissures in support for Israel in the US, for all of the fact that Israel is the most radicalizing, destabilizing, revisionist state in the region, something that is acknowledged by more and more of the states in the region and seen every day on their mobile devices by the people in the region. For all of the fact that Israel is acting with such criminality and impunity, still it is the case that in the US, there is a deeply ingrained racism towards Palestinians, lack of understanding of Palestinians, and the Canadian Prime Minister apparently just gave the game away. I don't know if you've seen this quote. Mark Carney, during the NATO summit, in an interview, I think it was with CNN, he said, these are the conditions for two states. We have to have he spoke the usual verbiage. And so he said, if you want, you could call it a Zionist Palestinian state. That's how he described the outcome. Now, I don't think Mark Carney is uniquely vile and ill-intentioned. I think Mark Carney was actually saying, okay, I'm quite new to this material. I've heard what my advisors have said. I've heard what all the Western leaders have said. If I understand what they're asking for, it's a Zionist Palestinian state, right? Where the Palestinians accept whatever the Israelis tell them, because this isn't really going to help them. So they ignore their own history. I'm maybe imputing too much. So the game is up. This is what is on offer. And the worry that we have is that the West is committed to a settler colonial apartheid vision, and that's what we have to break out of. And we don't have a Palestinian national movement and leadership that can take Israel's vulnerabilities and the ability, therefore, to create a real change where there will be equality, not just an end to genocide, but actual rights. You don't have a leadership that can take that project forward with agency, with unity. And that is the competition that's going to play out right now. Thankfully, the West is in decline. Thankfully, Israel is in overreach. But it's going to be a hard next period. Let's not fool ourselves that this is going to be easy.